Good evening or good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. A very special live chat this evening or this afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in from, as we have got a genuine legend coming on the show. Very quickly, my name's Rich. I run and operate the Hard Compound. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. One-stop shop for all things motorsport. From IndyCar to F1, touring cars, NASCAR, World Endurance Championship, bikes, rallying, and everything else that you can hope to shake a stick at. And we cover these in the form of articles, mainly written articles, 2 or 3 times a day across our social media platforms. These take the form of race reviews, race previews, any breaking news, throwbacks, birthdays, car liveries that we like, or just lots and lots of very, very good motorsport stuff, we hope, for you all to enjoy. And we also do live interviews, such as this one. These are streamed on our Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel. We've done well over 100 of these, and I'm not going to name all the guests, but they are recorded automatically and can be watched back in the video section on our Facebook and the live section on our YouTube channel. We've had the honor and the privilege of speaking with some amazing drivers, past and present, and some motorsport personalities. As I said, I won't name them all, but we spoke with Mr. Mario Andretti. We've spoken with like Jackie Ickx. We've had like John Watson and like Hans Stuck, many, many others, including the current IndyCar champion, Mr. Alex Palou, which leads us very nicely on to our guest this evening. Doesn't need much introduction, so I'm not really going to give one. An absolute legend of motorsport, particularly in North America, but around the world as well. His team, incredibly successful team that he set up, have won 15 IndyCar championships in its various guises, 5 Indianapolis 500s, 6 runnings of the 24 Hours of Daytona, the Brickyard 400, 12 Hours of Sebring, and many, many, many more. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring him in. Please join me in extending a very, very warm welcome to the legend, Mr. Chip Ganassi. And there we are, Mr. Ganassi. How are you?
Rich, how are you? Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. Firstly, thank you very, very much for sparing your Sunday afternoon there and coming on and having a chat. As I said, it's a real honor to have you on. So really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
No, well, that's very good to hear. As I said on the social media, guys, I don't normally get nervous, but Chip Ganassi, wow. So fantastic to have such a fantastic guest on. Just very quickly, guys, if you want to put some comments in the comment section, whichever platform you are viewing on, please do so. And we'll try and work them into the chat as best we can. So we have a lot to get through, and we're going to try and do it as quickly and as thoroughly as possible. Yeah, firstly, Chip, how's things been in the tail end of the various seasons that you've been running this year? Has it been okay?
Yeah, it's been good, Rich. Thanks. Had a little downtime after the IndyCar season. We cleaned up the IMSA season this past weekend in Atlanta. We finished second there. One of our young drivers, or one of our young up-and-coming drivers, Kevin Simpson, just won the ELMS championship today in Portimao, Portugal. So that was good. We have a WEC race to go yet in Bahrain, and a Extreme E race to go yet in Chile. But the big one is after the end of the IndyCar season, and so it's been a little bit getting a little better sleep these days.
Yeah, good. I can only imagine how much sleep you must lose during a year. Because as you've just alluded to, there's so many series that you guys are racing in, and yeah, it's truly incredible what you've created over the last 33 years. Is it now?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Thank you.
And far be it from me to say anything but hats off to everyone at Chip Ganassi Racing for what you guys do. It's absolutely incredible. That's good to hear, and that's the present day. But I guess we have to start right back at the start. Where did your interest in the world of motorsport or cars stem from initially?
It's a great question, Rich, and I've told this story probably 1,000 times.
Yeah,
many of your viewers might have heard it already. I mean, my father was in the asphalt paving business, and he ironically paved a go-kart track.
Right.
I was only 5 years old at the time, and the guy didn't pay him for the paving job on the go-kart track. So we end up with 3 go-karts in my cousin's garage, and that was the beginning of my fossil fuel fired youth, I guess.
And that was the
It
start.
all started with go-karts when I was about 5 years old. Right.
It's always a great place to start, and so many people have started there, and it's been a great proving ground, and it still continues to be the case.
No question.
Which is great. When did you first start thinking, I'd love to have a go at this, and really sort of start pushing on to do that?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I started with go-karts, and then was involved in dirt bikes after that. Did some snowmobile racing and lots of other things. And I was probably 16 or 17 years old, and my father was an entrepreneur, had his own company, and it was I was going to go to work for him and take over the family business or whatever. But I wanted to do my own thing, and my father was, he was a strong fellow, and I wasn't going to work with him. I was going to work for him, if you will. So I wanted to do my own thing, and racing I thought maybe, I'd give it a try for a couple of years and see if I can make a go of it. And that's really, I was going to make a go at first as a driver, obviously, and took a 10-year stab at that, and then obviously got into car ownership.
Yeah, sure. Because obviously, from the research I've done, you were also you were kind of racing, obviously through into karting and then up into cars, and you were racing while you were studying, and you got your degree in finance, I believe, if that's correct.
Yes, degree in finance from Duquesne University here in Pittsburgh. Right.
It's a cool university to go to as well. I've heard a bit about it. And I guess that was with perhaps one eye on going into the family business, as you say, but you were doing racing as well. You did some Formula Ford and Formula V and all that kind of stuff.
Super V, Formula Fords, a little bit of sports cars, and then right into Indy cars. Yeah. It was interesting in those days. There really wasn't the, in the late 70s, early 80s, I wouldn't say there was a defined ladder system like there is today. Maybe it's not so defined today, but back in those days, there was nothing. No ladder system at all. And it was every man for himself, how he got to the top. And, those were really that was a renaissance period in racing in the 70s and, the late 70s, if you will. Guys like Mario and, Johnny Rutherford and Gordon Johncock and Rick Mears and the Unser brothers, Bobby Unser, Al Unser. Yeah. Those are the days. And those guys were there for a long time because there was nobody really breaking into it.
Yeah.
And, and soon that glass ceiling broke and guys started to break into the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And just that list there, that's some incredible names there. I mentioned I was lucky enough, I was one of the guests we had. Al Unser Jr. came on here. And he's got so many tales from across, racing and everything else. And it just sounds like an incredible era to have been trying to break into, I guess, because and as you alluded to, it certainly wasn't easy. One thing I did want to touch on though was where are we? The USAC Gold Crown series. Was that the short oval dirt and pavement type racing? Or
right, that was pavement. I didn't do any of that. That was pavement on what they called. They had what they called. The early champ cars were really dirt cars. They were like large sprint cars that were built for asphalt racing, and on these sort of quarter-mile asphalt tracks, eighth-mile asphalt tracks, mile tracks. They raced them on mile tracks.
Wow.
And but they were not any match for when I think it was Jack Brabham actually that brought the first rear engine car, to Indianapolis type racing. And, That was in the early '60s. So I think there was sort of a changing period going on. And in those days, the it wasn't long before these English manufacturers were coming over to the United States selling their wares, like Lola or March,
Yeah.
or I'm trying. Some of the early cars were just copies of those cars that were built.
Came over, didn't they? Ralph and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, those little short track.
Right. But I was always in a Formula car from the beginning. I did no front engine cars or dirt racing at all. I was always on asphalt when I got to cars, and really didn't participate in USAC, if you will.
Okay, sure. It just sprung to mind because it's something I've always wanted to see live. It's just crazy stuff, which is great. But as you mentioned, you was it 81? You're in the Formula V USA. You drove for March and drove the route and everything. Was that your first experience of racing a wing car, a ring, or was it?
Yes. I mean, I think actually I did some Formula Atlantic before that. So but pretty much on a regular basis, Super V was my first experience with aerodynamics on a regular basis. And in terms of a championship, in terms of running for a championship, yes.
Sure. I mean, and I ask this question to everyone who's made the transition from karts into, into the aerodynamics series. I mean, how much of a change was it? Because some people have said for them it was huge, and others have said it's just like a big go-kart.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought of it as a big go-kart. I was so used to seeing the front wheels that sports car racing didn't really appeal to me, and or sedan racing. I always liked Formula car racing. I liked you had to be a little more, you had to be precise, if you will, driving it. You couldn't be, you talked about these the early dirt champ cars and what have you before that. I mean, the reason that was a stepping stone, if you will, the IndyCar racing was because of the horsepower.
Sure.
But that was nothing like it wasn't about horsepower in the in the early 80s. Aerodynamics were really coming into play by then, with the 79, with the car that John Barnard drew for Johnny Rutherford, the Chaparral. You remember that, the first ground effect car, that was maybe a year behind the Lotus 78 that Mario drove to the Formula One World Championship. So, that was a big time of lots of change in Formula car racing, if you will. And, ground effect came in, and, drivers were learning how to do that. And, Super V drivers and Formula Atlantic drivers were a lot more adept at that than guys coming out of sprint cars or dirt champ cars.
Right.
We're used to steering with their right rear tire versus a ground effect car. You want to keep straight all the time. You couldn't run it loose.
Yeah, slightly a little more. Well, you lose the word loose. I was just going to say you've got to drive it a bit more tight, so it kind of ties in.
Right. Yeah.
Which is
your friends out there in the internet land, tight is understeer and loose is oversteer. Right?
That's it. It's all about back end and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, just to sort of fast forward a bit, and I hope, maybe you don't mind me saying this. I mean, you went pretty much from Formula V and that kind of a formula almost straight into IndyCar, which
right.
these days people would be really because
there was really no in between step in those days. I mean, there was no, I don't know what. I mean, in Europe there was Formula 2, I guess. There was really any step you made, you were making a step from, 300 horsepower car to an 800 horsepower car. There was really nothing in between at that time. So it was pretty big. I remember my first experience in an Indy car with all that turbo boost and what have you, and 48 inches of boost or something, or 52 inches of boost, I think. It nailed you in the seat when you put your foot to the floor. Oh yeah, it was a little bit daunting at first, I'll have to admit.
I can imagine those first few laps. You must have been thinking,
Right.
What's happening here?
But that's but like most things, I mean, once they got a little bit of air on them, a little downforce, you got a little speed, with more speed because they became more comfortable to drive.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I guess like the racer just takes over with whatever you're driving is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Just before we get on to the IndyCar thing, someone did actually say the Formula Ford Festival has just finished today here in the UK at Brands Hatch. Did you ever come over and race in that, or were you always?
I did not. I was. I mean, I finished my last Formula Ford race in the U.S. I finished third in the national championships, which would be like our Formula Ford Festival, I guess, in the U.S. And I just never had the opportunity in those days. Jeremy Shaw from the U.S. does a great job bringing drivers over to the Formula Ford Festival there, and they've had some success over the years. Most recently, I think with Max Esterson, I think won it. The last year or the year before, and won the Walter Hayes. He's won some of those races, some of those big races. So it's nice to get an American, name out in that arena.
Yeah,
certainly.
Absolutely. And he's now in F3, I believe.
I think he's in GB3. Yeah.
Yeah, GB3. That's it. Yeah. So he's doing very well, which is great to see.
Yeah.
Just real quickly, so your first sort of foray into what was then kart was with Brayton Racing, wasn't it? With Lee.
Right. Scott Brayton. Right.
Yeah. And before we go on, I mean, very sad loss of him.
Yes. He was a good friend. He was a good friend, and really, I knew him from Formula Ford days, and his father was an IndyCar driver, and had some success. His father did, and Scott got into it and had some success as well. Had a quick car. Was on pole, I think, at Indy a couple times, and certainly on the front row there. And Scott had a great career, and unfortunately, died at Indianapolis one day during practice.
Yeah, it was because he'd already put it on pole, hadn't he? And it was in the practice.
Yes, it was after. Right, it was after qualifying. Yeah,
and it just looked so innocuous as well. I remember at the time it didn't look like a big one.
A bad accident. Right. Yeah.
Sometimes you look at something and you think, "Oh,
yeah,"
but that one was
right.
Really, very, very sad. But that's obviously back to your start in it. I wasn't going to mention this, but you didn't qualify for that first race. Was it?
No, right.
Was the car always a bit?
Yeah, it was. That was at Phoenix, Arizona, at the end of the year. And the good news is I came back in the spring and showed him what I could do.
Yeah. Obviously, that was with Rhodes, wasn't it? Rhodes
Racing. Rhodes, yeah. We qualified, I think, 11th or something, or in our 11th or 12th. I was out. My second IndyCar race, I remember I out qualified Johnny Rutherford and Gordon Johncock and a bunch of guys, and I was thought, oh, nothing to this,
Yeah, I think I can beat these guys.
Piece of cake.
Yeah, absolutely. I did read somewhere that I think you didn't qualify as fastest, but you set the highest speed on that first weekend. I think I read somewhere you were going quickest at one point than anyone else. 197 miles an hour, which is pretty good, given that.
Yeah, that was it. No, that was at Indianapolis then. So that was
Indy?
Right. That was at Indy. It was my I did my fastest laps in qualifying, I think is what. Yeah. So, wow. I just, I mean, you believe me, and in those days it was a lot different. There were 59 or 60 car driver combinations, for 33 spots in qualifying. So it was a little different than it is today, and I mean, and of those 59, maybe, 40 of them were real. I mean, real cars that could really do something, maybe 40 to 45 of them or something. I mean, there were a lot of good guys went home.
Yeah,
and that happened a lot in those days in the United States. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I do slightly later on. I do remember there was like bump day and everything else, and all everyone. It was I'm a bit obsessed with the Indy 500. If we're going to come on to a bit later. But just very quickly, that 82 season. Did you have any real expectations for that season, or was it just a case of just seeing what you could do? And
I was just it was I just turned 23. I graduated from college, and I missed commencement at Duquesne University because I was qualifying at Indy.
Wow.
And that was the day Gordon Smiley got killed in qualifying there.
Oh,
So it was a little bit, it was a little odd. And then the following week or 2 weeks later, we had another young driver, another rookie, Jim Hickman, died in Milwaukee. So it was kind of an odd time in racing. I mean, 2 deaths, 2 weeks in a row, 3 weeks, 2 races in a row. And it was odd at best. And, I really didn't know what to think. I was out of college. I was getting pulled, to work in the family business, and I wanted to race cars instead. And it was a little bit of it was an odd time, certainly.
Yeah, I guess your mind was being pulled
yes,
a few different ways, and
sure.
Again,
and nobody, you're anybody that age, when you're 18 to 25 years old, you probably go through, a young man goes through more changes in that part of his life than any other part of his life, So it was now you're being thrown a lot of money in front of you and opportunities and what have you. So it was a challenge to sift through all that. I remember.
Yeah, I'll bet, especially in the era with the reasons you just mentioned, and Gordon Smiley again, probably the worst accident I've ever seen.
Right, worst accident ever. Right.
It's terrible, truly terrible. But there were some good other rookies that year. I mean, we had like Bobby Rahal, Alan Jr., Danny Sullivan, John Paul Jr., and Derek Daly were rookies that year.
Right. Yeah. It was a pretty good rookie class. I think there were 11 rookies in the field of 33 cars. So a third of the field were rookies.
Wow.
And I was lucky. I qualified them all. Yeah.
Yeah. Happy days. Yeah. Great stuff. Excuse me. Should we come on to? Yeah, let's go to. Let's go on to 83. I mean, obviously you had a few races. I think it was 5 races, and you some pretty, some decent finishes and gained some experience. Patrick Racing. Obviously, they played a huge part in your later career, which we're going to come on to. Just from research and a bit of knowledge I picked up over the years, it felt almost like a breakout season for you. 83.
83 was kind of good. I got with Patrick, and their cars weren't that good that year. It's the worst thing in a driver's career when you're on the ladder and your career is climbing, and you get on a good team that's got bad cars that year. They was just an off year for them, and was probably I think that was the final year they built their own cars, and they and sort of March was coming in with chassis at that time that were just better. Robin Hurd designed cars were just better than what were coming out of the U.S. at that time, and started to take over the sport. And Patrick was stuck on his own car and thought it was better, and it really wasn't. And so we hung on. The good news was I beat my teammates a few times, more than not, and it worked out well. Yeah,
I was just going to say, I mean, you're in the team at various points that season. You mentioned them before. You had like Johnny Rutherford and Gordon Johncock. I mean, 2 pretty good guys to learn from. Obviously, they've been there and done it.
Finally, at the end of the year, we strung together a couple podiums. At Caesar's Palace and at Laguna Seca, and it was good. Yeah,
that's cool. And just to sort of touch on that, and I've got on my notes here that things clicked at Michigan, Caesar's Palace, Laguna Seca, Phoenix at the end of the season. And I also said I think it was only Mario Andretti scored more points than you that in those last 4 races, which is good, good company keeping. Caesar's Palace, obviously, us over here in Europe, we all get focused on F1, and the circuit. I don't really remember it, but from what I've seen,
it's actually interestingly, the circuit was in an empty lot.
It was a car park, wasn't it?
It was a car park where the Mirage Hotel is now.
Oh, was it the Mirage? Okay.
Before the Mirage
further up the strip.
Right. And now the Mirage is an old hotel there, but in those days it wasn't even built yet.
Yeah, I actually saw Cirque du Soleil in the Mirage about 6 years ago, which was a bit. I never realised I was sitting on the Grand Prix or the IndyCar track. The circuit was known as being pretty tough on drivers and on cars in F1. I believe was it Keke Rosberg won the championship, I think, there at Caesar's Palace. How did you find it at that time? Obviously in a different car.
Yeah, it was actually an advantage for me to go to a new track because some of these circuits, these drivers have been to 77 times, and they knew every crack in the asphalt on the circuit. And
Yeah.
we would go to a new circuit, and it was like, okay, game on. So that's why we ran well that year at places like Cleveland and Caesar's Palace, and at Caesar's Palace, as I recall, our car was getting to be really good. We were sort of adopting a lot of the. I think we, took a March underbody and stuck it on the Patrick Wildcat car, and they so it was we started to move up the grid pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And obviously, I believe that was your first trip to the podium, which must have felt good. Maybe not get a monkey off your back, but get that first one.
Yeah. I mean, I've been robbed a few times before that. I thought I'd been robbed. We were running really well at Cleveland that year earlier on in the season, and I had an engine problem with like 8 laps to go or something. The engine quit, and I was running second or something, and. Anyway, but but that was good to get my first podium out of the way.
Yeah, and to get it in Vegas, pretty cool thing.
Right, good place to do it. Good place
to do it. And then you did it at another cool place.
Then we did it like a week later in Monterey, California. Right.
At Laguna Seca. I mean,
right.
To us Brits, we've, because of certain movies and stuff, we've heard of Talladega and Indianapolis and Watkins Glen and all the F1 stuff. But Laguna Seca is the one above all others that I would love to.
Great, a lot of elevation change. You're up and down and around, and it's a lot like not as large as a place like Spa. Not as big, but certainly, that up and down sort of same thing you have.
Yeah. It's a fantastic circuit, and to stand on your first 2 podiums, Las Vegas and Laguna Seca. It's pretty good. One thing I do want to touch on is I believe it was your first full experience of the Indy 500. Now, I mentioned I'm obsessed with it. I've got the T-shirt and everything. I love it. It's been that bucket list item for me, and we ticked it off. And we'll come to that because it was a good year for you guys. Had you been as a fan to the Indy 500 previously, and then gone inside the ropes as a racer? I was just wondering if you had.
Yeah, I was there. I went as a fan in 1972, I think.
Okay.
I want to say 1972, the year that the pace car crashed into the photographer stand
at the end of the pit lane.
That was right. Yeah, I was. But I remember Al Unser won in the Johnny Lightning Special. I do remember that.
Oh, yes.
He won 2 years in a row, 71, 72. So I'm pretty sure it was 72.
Wow.
So ironically, I went back there 10 years later and was racing in it. Right.
Wow. That's, I mean, obviously you had designs on going racing and stuff. Did you ever think one day I'm going to race here in the big one?
Yeah. I mean,
much less have success further on as well.
You think about those things in the back of your mind, but you don't really tell people because they would think you're crazy if you were to tell people at 10 or 12 years old, I'm going to come back and race here someday. I mean, it just didn't sound like it was just something unattainable, in those days or at that age. I wasn't even racing then. So I was, I was just fooling around in those days with dirt bikes or something. Yeah. But it was, you think about it in the back of your mind, but never really giving it much credence, if you will.
Yeah, it's kind of a dream, but it's something that you've got no idea how to set in motion, I guess, when you're that young.
Right, that's a good way to put it, yes.
Yeah, wow. Amazing. Back to sort of 83. I mean, when you were, 82, that first time that you actually raced there, you were inside the ropes, you were going to race.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as I said, I've been, and it's just the most incredible day or week or whatever it might be, or month back then.
Right.
Did you prepare for it any differently? Your first race at the Indy 500, or I guess you try not to let it affect you, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, not really. I think I'd been in enough races at that point. This was 82 was my rookie year, and you think, at the end of the day, sure, it's the biggest sporting event in the world. On one hand, on the other hand, you still have to do the start and do the pits. Do the pit stops and get through the first corner and, all those things like any other race. And so I think, I'll give you a funny story.
Yeah.
In 1982, I was, I'd known Mario and Michael. I'd raced against Michael Andretti in Formula Fords, and I knew Mario, and I'd spent some time at their summer home and things, and off season or off track or whatever. And so I knew Mario, and I was actually driving in 1982. I was driving his car that he drove in '81 that he arguably won the race with, and there was a big
the Bobby Unser thing.
Right.
Mm.
And so interestingly, on the morning of the race, I remember standing there, talking to some people had my uniform on and everything already at the time, and standing on the grid there, and I'm talking to some people, and I see Mario come walking up, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I'm at the I remember vividly thinking, I'm at the Indianapolis 500. It's race day, 400,000 people in the grandstand, and I'm standing here with this is all going through my mind in a millisecond.
Yeah.
And I'm standing here with some friends, and Mario Andretti's walking up to me, and he's probably going to say something really profound. And I'm just thinking, wow, isn't this great? And I turn, I go, hey, how are you? And he looks at me, he goes, hey, kid, don't fuck up. And I said, oh, there you go. And,
no pressure.
No pressure, right? So ironically, that was the year that Kevin Kogan had his issue at the start there.
Oh,
and ironically took Mario out. And I remember coming down for the start, and the guys in the radio, they said, green flag, green, green, green. And I looked down and I sort of see all this carnage in front of me, and I just kind of rolled out of the throttle and steered around it, didn't think anything of it, and it was a big thing. It was a big deal, it took out some front runners and, but more importantly than that, I think for me, it broke the ice and kind of calmed me right down, so I think, oh shit, okay. So you're gonna come around, a red flag, come in, stop the car, get out. Well, there's nothing to that, just like any other crash in the first corner or something.
Yeah.
And I was lucky not to be involved in it. And
yeah.
So that kind of broke the ice for me the first time.
Yeah.
And once the race got underway, I was off and going,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering the first time that you were able to say to Mario, "Hey, that first race?" I didn't.
And no, I never said that to him, because that was and you realize years later why, like these guys, you go to Indianapolis, and whether you win or lose, you just, if you win, it's a great thing. There's one happy person that leaves there, or one happy team leaves there, and 32 other disappointed teams. And, you just think about it till the next year you get there, about what happened and how you can do better, and, not let what happened to you last year happen again, or whatever, something like that, And so, I can see, obviously, at the time, many years later now, I obviously understand his frustration.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on that sort of tack very quickly, I heard Roberto Guerrero came on here earlier this year, and he probably had the ultimate.
Very similar, right.
The ultimate kind of, I can't wait till next year type thing.
Right. I remember that vividly, because that was our first year. That was my first year as a team owner. So I want to say that was 80, that was at 88, I guess. I think it was 1980, or no, I'm sorry, 90.
92 Guerrero, I think. Yes, because it was the year of all the crashes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So Eddie Cheever was second in qualifying for us.
Yeah.
And Eddie qualified second, and Guerrero was on pole, and I'm on the radio in the pits. And I remember Cheever coming on the radio, because in those days you didn't have live feed. You had like a 3 or 4 second delay, or a 7-second delay or something.
Yeah.
And I remember Cheever coming on the radio, and he said, "You're not going to believe this. Guerrero just crashed into the wall." And I'm like, what? And what? And then, of course, you see it happen, and you go, Jesus, Yeah. And then promptly at the start, Michael and Mario went around Eddie on the outside and the inside into turn one, and the rest is history. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had Eddie on here start of last year, and I asked him about it, and he just said he almost like you probably heard it in his tone of voice. He almost had that. What the hell just happened? He was like,
Right.
"Where's he gone?"
Yeah. Right.
Just, yeah.
Yeah.
No, amazing. It's, but yeah, so Indy's a big thing. But I said that year I got 83. Was it you drove the two? Was it 8th that year? And
Yeah. 8th. That was in the Patrick car. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess
in
we top 10 at the Indy 500 in
Yeah. Not bad. I
full
mean,
season.
yeah. I remember. Al Unser won that race in and I passed that son of a bitch like 3 times in the race, and he won. And it's like I'm still trying to figure out how that happened, but yeah.
I imagine, yeah.
Yeah. So
It's just something about the youngsters at Indianapolis. They just
right.
yeah, fair enough. Just move on. I mean, 84 very quickly. Certain Brazilian fellow that people would have heard of, Emerson Fittipaldi, joined the team.
Sure. No.
Yeah,
He came on
wow.
the team he went to he came in 85.
85, sorry. Okay.
Emerson came in 85. I never drove as a teammate with Emerson.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. 84 was the year I drove the old Milwaukee car, and that was still with John Cock as my teammate.
Right. Okay, gotcha. I mean,
John
still
Cock.
very cool to have those guys around. Just to sort of, I mean, did you feel like things were moving forwards in 84? I mean, the results seemed to be a little bit
I
better.
did. We finally got a March chassis. We finally, finally at let's see, not at Indianapolis, but at the following race, we finally had a March chassis delivered to us. So 84 was starting, things were starting to happen. I was starting to have some it was going to be my first full season, and I was looking forward to, I was getting paid. I was getting well paid, I should say. I was a well paid driver, and I was looking forward to a driving career, obviously. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, just before we get on to that reason, which I don't want to spend too long on because it's not particularly nice, as you're very aware. Did see though, in your final race that you came second at Cleveland behind Danny Sullivan. Danny's went on and following year did his spin and win thing. I had Danny on here, lovely guy, love him, absolutely love him.
Great guy, yeah.
And you came second at Cleveland. It was your best result, I believe, in IndyCar up to then, and things were sort of feeling good. I mean,
hit the wall, right?
I mean, like, do you have like memories of that second place at Cleveland?
I just remember it was it was an interesting day. They just came out with a new fuel nozzle. I remember, and a lot of teams were having trouble. All the fuelers were having trouble getting the nozzle in, and of course our fueler was as well, and lit me on fire on the first pit stop. And actually, it was young Sonny Meyer, and he's got scars today on his body from that. And,
wow.
Yeah, unfortunately, and he's still around. I see him every once in a while.
Yeah.
And but yeah, that was a tough day. And I was back, and I was down a lap, and I made up my lap, and I passed the leader at one point. I was having a good day.
Yeah.
I was coming back from being in the back, and then I just we had these little tiny shocks on the back. We were trying, and it was bumpy in Michigan in those days, and I think I was bottoming the shock, I guess, and it just sort of go-karted on me.
Yeah.
Lost the rear end, and that was that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was aware of the crash, and I tend to not watch crashes because obvious reasons. I kind of had to for this one.
But for your fans out there, they can just Google it.
Yeah,
Google Ganassi crash Michigan. You can,
I saw it and instantly regretted it because it wasn't a happy one. I mean,
I don't really remember any part of it. They say your mind has a way of blanking those things out. So
yeah,
I've seen it 1,000 times. It doesn't bother me a bit.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I mean, we're going to touch on this a bit later as we come on to it. It put me in mind of the Greg Moore crash because it was a very similar kind of thing in the wall and car flips and you hit. And if you do want to watch it, folks, as Chip just said, you can Google it. you might want to squint when you're watching it because it's not particularly nice. But I mean, you suffered a pretty severe like head injury at the time.
Yeah, no, I just had a cerebral contusion, like they call it. I had a little brain swelling, and thank God that was about a week or two. It was gone. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't so bad. Well, that's good. And unfortunately, as it turned out, I guess you didn't race for what 9-10 months, something like that, but you were still thinking about getting back into it full time and going racing and doing your thing. But unfortunately, it didn't quite work out that way.
Right.
Was that obviously as a direct result of?
Yeah, I mean, it was partly a direct result of the crash, partly partly a result of there was some question about by that time now Michael and Al Unser were coming into the sport, and they were getting lots of opportunities that I didn't have a name in those days, so no, they were getting opportunities I didn't, and and it was just the opportunities weren't there. But I remember feeling at the time, look, if I'm going to stop, I want to stop on my own terms and not on, not being pushed out. So I was, so I did 2 more indies after that, and I called it a day. Just the opportunities weren't there with the front running teams, and I knew enough in those days to realize if in those days, Jesus Christ himself couldn't carry a car if he was driving. I mean, it just if you weren't with a good team, you weren't going to do well. Right?
Yeah, sure. And I guess, I mean, obviously, you don't. Anyone who will have any idea about who you are, you don't seem to. You're not a quitter. You don't just sort of step away from things if there's a chance that it can happen. So, I guess it was just the situation threw up the drivers that were around, and fair enough. Just a couple of things I want to touch on. 1987, the 24 Hours of Le Mans. What a race! In the world,
great opportunity. Great opportunity. I got to drive the Sauber with Johnny Dumfries and Mike Thackwell. And good car. And Johnny came in a couple laps earlier than he should have. Everybody was wondering why. And may he rest in peace, by the way.
Yes, very sad.
Good guy. Yeah, very sad that he passed. But he brought the car in a couple laps early, and no one knew why. And obviously, I got in the car, and there was something. The engine just didn't feel right, and it only lasted about half a lap, and then it blew up. And so that was that.
Yeah, frustrating, I'm sure, but a terrific event, and one for any motorsport fan, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great event, good car, and the good news was I was able to go back there and on my own terms, and so that worked out, for the better as well.
Yeah, we're definitely going to come and touch on that. I mean, just again, touch on it. You had a class victory at Watkins Glen in '86.
Won the sports car race with another countryman of yours, David Sears. Yeah, as my teammate. I just spoke to him a few weeks ago, ironically. And we talk about once a year still. And the racing world misses him. I wish he was still around racing, but he's on other things. So good for him.
We love him. Yeah. Very proud of him. One of our best Brits, I think.
Good guy.
Which is good. And you raced that year in the 24 Hours of Daytona, which we'll again touch on very shortly.
With John Paul Jr. with Phil Conti's car.
Ivan Capelli as well, and
you're right, Capelli, right.
Yeah, one of those. I mean, just very quickly. I mean, Daytona. We all know that it's the banking and everything and the whole thing around it. Bit of a challenge for a driver, isn't it? Really big.
It was. In those days they didn't have any lights. There were just the lights on the car, and so it was kind of dark. It was kind of dark there, and it was. It was an experience. I wanted to do it. The March was not as durable a car as the Porsches in those days. So we were challenged a bit there, but we're always running in the top 2 or 3. But with that Buick engine and what have you, the gearbox couldn't handle the torque. And it was a challenge to get that car to the end of a 24-hour race.
Yeah, sure. And I've got here that you got 310 laps in, which is
Yeah,
pretty
it
good.
wasn't bad. Yeah,
That's a good way to go. Yeah.
right.
Obviously, we'll touch on that side of things very shortly on the team ownership side. 1990. I guess it was the start of Chip Ganassi Racing, wasn't it? You
Yes.
co-owner with
Yeah.
Pat Patrick, and it.
Yeah, the deal was I bought Patrick's team in at the end of '88. He ran it in '89. And he ran it in '88. We both ran it in '89, and then he was gone in '90, and I changed the name of the team. And that was that.
Yeah. He went off to do the Alfa Romeo thing, didn't he? And
right.
And you took it over. And you had like a decent chassis that you took on and everything.
Yeah, we had we still had we had the 1990 Penske PC7 or something, I think.
Yeah.
That was left over. It seemed like a pretty good car, and we struggled with that the first couple of races, and then in '91 we struggled for a couple of races. And then I bought a Lola and said the hell with it,
Yeah, went on and got on with it.
Right.
I just want to sort of get on to some of the drivers. Obviously we know that you like winners. It's kind of your catchphrase, and rightly so. Just really quickly before we get into it, what do you? Obviously now you're a team owner. What do you look for in a driver apart from ability? Is there a quality that you think?
I've had that question. Yeah, I don't know. I've had that question 1,000 times, and Rich, I'm just one of these guys. I sit down, I talk to these guys, and I rarely talk to them about racing per se. I want to know what else their life is made up of. I mean, look, you get to this level, everybody's fast. Everybody's won races. Everybody's fast. I mean, it's just a matter of getting the right personality in the team. You want somebody that's got a lot of heart. You want somebody that's got a lot of passion. You want somebody that's gonna, they're gonna listen to you if they have some things. I think we know a little bit about IndyCar racing, so we try to teach that to some of these younger drivers. And you want somebody that wants to learn. You don't want an old dog that doesn't want to learn new tricks.
Yeah,
you have to get somebody that has to keep an open mind. And we think we know what we're doing in the formula, so we just want somebody that wants to learn and wants to work and has some passion for the sport.
Yeah, fantastic. And also, your first driver you mentioned was Eddie Cheever, and he, Italian American, and I didn't have
my MO fully developed at that time, and but Eddie was a good choice for us at the time, and he set the stage, for the team early on, and but it was really, when we had Ari and Michael Andretti, the team started to take off and gel, and yeah.
I think they were the two guys I was going to sort of come on to. Obviously, I mentioned that we had Ari on here. He was 2 or 3 years ago, and great guy. He's one of those guys. He sort of maybe fairly similar to you in character. Doesn't take any nonsense. Just sort of very direct and straight down the line, and no airs and graces. And when I saw that, obviously, I knew at the time he was driving for you, and I thought, that's a kind of a good fit.
It was a good fit. We were on pole for Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And, we had Mo Nunn come on the team at that time and as the engineer. And, things were starting to click as the team. And then, of course, we had an opportunity a couple of years later to get Michael when he was flunking out of Formula One. So he came back, and it was good. It worked out well for us. Bang, right off the bat, we won in, with the new Reynard chassis. And
Surfers Paradise,
won at Surfers right off the bat, and then won again in Toronto later in the season. Wow. And so it was good,
Yeah, he hit the ground running. Obviously, very, very good driver.
Right. And we finished first in class at Indianapolis with the first Cosworth. So there were three of those Penske cars in front of us were 1, 2, 3 with that the big giant Chevrolet V8 that
one that
sort of skirted the rule that year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say
Wow.
we were first in class in 1994.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fourth.
First of the
Yeah.
first of the ones who kept it between the lines.
Yeah.
Just very quickly on like Mike. I mean, I appreciate you can't say too much because what was going on at McLaren in F1, and he left early. I mean, was there a dialogue towards the end of '93? You were thinking about perhaps bringing him back, or was it all at the end of the season?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It was, there was some dialogue with Ron Dennis at the time, and he was clearly out. There wasn't a seat for him at Newman Haas, where his father was and where he'd driven before,
Sure.
because Mansell was there.
Yeah.
And he wasn't going to drive with Mansell. So, but ironically, I remember, sitting in I remember waking up in my bedroom watching the Formula One race in the beginning of May of '94 there, and with Senna being hurt or paying for it with his life. I remember thinking, boy, that started a domino effect, and I lost Michael back to, Mansell went back to Formula One. That opened up a seat at Newman Haas, and Michael went back to Newman Haas, and that was that. So, it was a sort of a domino effect of that.
Yeah, I must have. I hadn't really thought about how that would have. Yeah, but then
it
kind of it all linked in, and obviously we lost one of the greatest ever.
Sure.
One thing I do want to talk about very quickly. Obviously they're not involved with the team at the moment, as I'm aware. You got one of your biggest signings of the next 15, 20 years was getting Target on board. I mean, it became one of those iconic sort of,
Right. It was just an iconic brand that came into racing at a time when, we were starting to get some traction as a team, and they were getting some traction in the U.S. as a retailer, and it just made for a great partnership for over 25 years. And, through all the different drivers, and they were really they built the foundation of the team, and obviously the fingerprints of that program are still all over the race team today.
Yeah.
It was a good experience for both of us, I think.
Yeah, very cool. And pretty from the most basic point of view, the cars looked brilliant. Every single one. It's so good.
The cars looked good, and they did a lot of TV commercials, and really took the sport up a level, I think, in terms of awareness and what have you, and it worked out well for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously they kind of stuck with you through the whole very messy split. And
right.
I read the book on it, and God, what a mess! It was a real mess, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I have that. This book, you mean?
That's it. I've got it. It's on the bookshelf over there.
Right. I just happen to have it right here.
Yeah. You must have thought, we got a big, the team was getting some traction, and then all this is going on. You must have thought.
Well, and I think so they had the split, and we took advantage of it when, we won the US 500, and we were the first team to come back to Indianapolis with our cars and try to bring the groups back together. I just wanted to win races. I didn't care if it was, in IRL or kart, or if it was in a parking lot. I just wanted to win.
Yeah,
and we had good drivers in those days, and that's what we were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on the drivers. 96 was you got a Honda on board, and they had like Jimmy Vasser. He,
won the championship.
He does not get mentioned enough when you're talking about some of the great drivers of the last 30 odd years. Everyone talks about
right. No, he was certainly one of them, and yes, and another guy came out of Formula Ford, Formula Atlantic, and just needed to get in the right car at Indianapolis, and he did, and that was the result.
Yeah, absolutely. And was it second season? He had a strong 95, 96. He really clicked with the 96.
We had a good package that year. I remember, this will get your IndyCar fans to give some perspective. We went into the final race in 1996 at Laguna Seca. There were 3 chassis that were vying for the championship: Reynard, Lola, and March. there were, Reynard, Lola, and Penske were the three chassis vying for the championship. It had three drivers, Vassar, Michael Andretti, and Allinger Jr., vying for the championship, the last race. And they had three different engines, okay, Honda, the Chevrolet, the Honda, the Omor, and the Ford, vying for the championship, and two different tire companies, Firestone and Goodyear, all coming down to the final race in 1996. And,
Wow.
and Vassar won the championship. Zanardi had the pass on Brian Herta on the last lap at the corkscrew. It was just an amazing day. You think how many people were, had a vested interest in the finish of that race. I'm not talking about even the people that were at the track, but you had Ford, Chevrolet, and Honda. You had all three, you had three chassis manufacturers, two tire manufacturers. You had hundreds of thousands of people that had a vested interest in the finish of that race.
Wow. I mean, when you put it that way, you realize
that was our first championship, right?
The scale of it. And it was
Vassar, right?
And it was your first championship as a team owner. Jimmy's one. I mean, you mentioned it. I've got to ask you about the pass. I mean, I'm not sure it would be allowed.
Right. They let him get away with that today. Yeah, right.
But what were you thinking when he did it? Were you thinking, what are you doing?
Well, we had no idea. Again, we didn't have live TV, so we didn't know what happened. We just heard people screaming. And, I was just glad that Vassar was going to win the championship.
Yeah, I guess that was your priority, wasn't it?
I was on Zanardi's car, and all I know is I look up, and he comes down the hill first, and I probably about jumped out of my skin, and it was the last lap, and, I'm just making sure that Jimmy was not, was going to finish the lap or whatever.
Yeah.
And Zanardi comes down the hill first, and I thought, wow. It was just it was a day I'll never forget. I can tell you.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, it all kind of went your way, and that makes it sound like luck. It wasn't, but obviously it ended up going your way with Jimmy.
Right. Right.
Wow, fabulous day. 97, 98. We're going to come to Alex Zanardi. I know someone in the comments asked about Alex. We're going to come to him very soon. 97 and 98. He went back to back.
Just on fire. The team had a really good package. Honda, Reynard, Firestone, that was the package they have in those days.
Yeah.
And it was just a killer, And we had Mo Nunn engineering the thing, and we were pretty bulletproof in those days. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was fantastic to watch. And a lot of people
the championship in 98, won the championship before the end of the season.
Yeah.
97 Zanardi's first championship. And, it was just magical.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Very cool. Obviously, you, I guess, lost out because of Zanardi's success. You allowed him to go to F1 with Williams.
Right. Well, it was kind of a little lost out, but then it was just a skip over the top of the mountain, if you will, because Mo and I went over to Barcelona to see Zanardi's test with Williams. And we met this young guy named Juan Pablo Montoya, who was a driver for Williams at the time.
Yeah.
And pretty much made a deal with Frank, and there we were. So we didn't lose a beat.
Yeah.
Montoya came on the team, and the car was really developed at that time. And, he came in and got in a good car, and he was a great driver at the time, blindingly fast. And, the rest is history. He just went on to scrape everybody off the table in 99.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, you kind of lost out for about a week because, to get Montoya in, wow.
Right.
As you say, what he went on to do and what he'd already done.
Right.
So many people see him as the greatest driver of a generation. He's certainly up there.
Sure, yeah. Certainly in the conversation, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I must admit, we went to the Indy 500 in 2022, and when I heard he was racing, I'd never seen him race. I know it wasn't with your team, but I was like, wow.
Yeah. Well, and people forget in 2000, he won the championship in 99. Then in 2000, we broke the ice and went back to Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Well, we actually had to race on Saturday at Nazareth in the kart series. That race was snowed out. in March or whenever it was, and it was rescheduled for the day before the Indianapolis 500.
Of
We had
course.
to go to Nazareth the day before Indy with a whole separate group of guys, and I rented the Milwaukee Bucks DC-9 jet, and I flew the entire. We had the truck drivers take over the cars and everything. It was a 1-day show. We
God.
we flew the team over early Saturday morning. The guys got out, finished fourth in that race, got back on the jet, flew back to Indianapolis, and did the Indy 500 and won it the next day.
I had no idea that was the case. Oh,
yeah,
my goodness, that's incredible. Yeah. And that was obviously Montoya's first crack at the Indy 500, and he went on it. And
It took him about 15 laps or so, and he popped into the lead and never looked back. Right.
He was, it was.
Yeah. He was on fire in those days. Yeah.
I think that was when the world sat up and went, "Oh, he can do this as well."
Right.
It was absolutely unreal. Wow, that's incredible. Truly incredible. Just want to skip back 1 year. I mean, you mentioned that he won the championship in his rookie year, and was that when?
No, he won the championship his
second year. Sorry, second year.
Right.
Yeah. And he, was it? I can't remember, was that the year that he won it because he won?
Wait, I'm sorry. That's an argument. Montoya won the championship, right? His first year, right?
And it was when he won more races than Dario.
Greg Moore. It was unfortunate because the final race was in Fontana, California, and unfortunately, we won the race on the same day. Greg Moore was tragically killed in the race at the track. So put a sour taste on the day for sure.
Yeah, I was going to touch on it, and it's obviously the ultimate bittersweet, isn't it? It's and again, one of those guys who is probably not mentioned enough when you talk about drivers is who could have been the next big thing, and I think world single-seater racing. He was
certainly Greg Moore was in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Red gloves. I always remember the red gloves. Which is great. Where are the time? Very quickly, I want to skip on. Where are we? Just want to touch on. Obviously, we mentioned that Montoya won the Indy 500.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a different mindset when you're from the other side of the pit wall and your guys leading to how you were when you were racing in the 500, or was it just? Or does it just depend on the race and the situation? Or I just wonder about the mindset.
Good question. I don't know. I'd say it's a good question. And certainly you have a different mindset because, you're looking at, you're at that point now, we'd been to Indianapolis, a number of times already. Yeah. And, we're there with a rookie and we're trying to teach him everything. And you're trying to, you got your fingers crossed and you got your, because anything can happen in that race and it usually does. And as we saw this past year, so you never really win that thing till the fat lady sings, as they say.
Yeah.
You never really, like in the old days they used to say just go, even if you won the race, they would say go an extra lap, just in case, back before electronics and what have you.
Yeah.
Because it was so, it was. There was, everybody wanted to make sure. Yeah. So I'd say it's a lot different than when you're a driver there.
Yeah.
A lot different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mario can tell you that. Yeah. It's a lot different.
I guess when you're behind the wheel, you're focusing on what you're doing. When you're
right.
Team partners, all the other.
Yeah. You're when you're behind the wheel, you're focusing on your car and your situation only. Whereas when it's your car in the race, you're looking at, somewhat at a lot of other cars as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure. So I want to fast forward a couple of years. We're going to come to this guy very soon, but you took on a chap called Scott Dixon. He's turned out okay.
I'd say he turned out okay. Yeah,
he's not bad. Did you see something early on in him because he was racing for a team, I forget who, and did they?
Yeah, early on, and I want to call out Scott and his father, Ron Dixon. Ron just passed away a few
Oh,
days ago, unfortunately. Yeah.
I'm very sorry to
And
hear that.
Scott ran over to, so he's in New Zealand now, as a matter of fact.
Very sorry to
But
hear
yeah, I mean, I just remember Scott as a young guy, and he was quiet and didn't say much, and he was obviously had the talent, and Toyota had their eye on him, and we were a Toyota team at the time, and they said, hey, you should try to get that guy, and we did, and the rest is history. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, he wasn't real excited about doing the IRL there at first, and but, I mean, that's kind of the way it took him, and it made him a better oval racer, I think, and made him a better racer overall, and it's shown up, years later. Here we are, you know, 6 championships later. Not bad. Yeah,
Yeah, very, very good. Very
yeah,
good. I mean, saying in '03, he hit the ground running, won his first race, and won the championship.
mhm.
It's pretty incredible. Well, again, something I would love to talk about was like Tony Renner. I mean, really awful what happened. That
Yeah, yeah. It
must have
was ironically, it was. I think it was. I just saw something this morning. It was 20 years. 20
Mm,
years ago today that happened.
yeah,
I remember getting that fateful call. I was in my office, and they were just testing around that day, and I got a phone call, and they said, "Hey, we just had a terrible accident. We're on our way to the hospital. It doesn't look good."
oh,
And
jeez.
I remember it was his. I mean, it was literally his first outing in the car, his first run, and I don't know what I don't know what was going through his mind or anything, but it was just a terrible, terrible, sad day. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. Not something we're going to dwell
yeah,
on, but obviously, many ways to think about it. Um, and another signing that again was later tinged with a bit of sadness was Dan Weldon. Obviously,
right.
a Brit, and obviously what happened to him was a terrible shock. But he was good for you as well, wasn't he? He was
No
very
question. Dan came out of the blocks, won
yeah.
the 24. Like we stuck him in the 24 hours at Daytona before he was ever in an IndyCar, and he won that.
Yeah.
And then he got to Miami and he won the first IndyCar race. The guy was like 2 for 2 before I even got the season started,
Wow.
and so he was quite a guy. And I think the you know Dixon will be the first to tell you that Dan Weldon guys like Dan Weldon and Dario made Dixon a better driver.
Wow.
And people don't realize, over all these years that we keep talking about, these cars kept changing, and what makes these cars fast kept changing over the years with each new change and iteration and engine and body configuration and body style. These cars change, and they change your drive style, that how you have to drive them to make them go fast. And
Yeah.
Dan was there at a time when there was a change going on, and he knew how to drive those cars,
Yeah.
and he was he was a winner, and he brought winning to mean a whole new thing at our team, no
Yeah.
question.
That's a
Yeah.
lovely line. I love that line. Just quickly on him. He was the reigning champion from '05.
Right.
When you sign a reigning champion, or you do a deal with a reigning champion to bring him in, do you as a team owner, do you feel extra pressure, or thinking, oh, he's won it elsewhere, we've got to try
Yeah,
and
I think we knew
go
we knew
here?
we could win races. We knew we could win. So and we knew we could win if we just had the right guy pushing the buttons. And
Yeah,
we knew he was a champion, and he had some falling out with Andretti over something. I'm not sure exactly what. I don't recall at the moment, but yeah. So it worked out well for us, that he came to the team at a time when he wanted to win, and we wanted to win, and it worked out well.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And obviously, we're not going to go into it, but just an awful day when we lost Dan, and
no question.
oh,
Yeah.
because of the time of the
And
day
thank God
where
that was not in my car. That was not in my car. Yeah.
yes, we want to
Right.
put that on. Yeah, he was elsewhere at the time, and I just remember because of it being in Vegas, it was late on a Sunday night here. I thought
Right.
I'll check the result in the morning,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's just the worst headline to wake up to.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Terribly sad, but it's good that his boys are getting involved with it and they're doing well. So
Right. Right.
that's good to see.
Yeah.
Just again, '08 to 11. You had 4 titles in a row. You had one for Scott and 3 for one of my favourite drivers. No disrespect to any of the other ones you've had, but one of my favourite drivers, Dario Franchitti.
Mm-hmm.
Just again, it must have been an absolutely like stellar time for for your
Right.
team.
He'd come with us, and he came with us actually to go to do NASCAR, and I stuck him in he wanted to try NASCAR, and we were doing pretty well at it, and he got involved in an accident at Talladega, and he broke his ankle, and I didn't have any sponsorship for the car, and it cost me a lot of money that year. It cost the team a lot of money, and I thought, oh, geez, what a disaster, and as it turned out, at that time, Dan was getting out of the car. So Dan stepped out of the car and, didn't feel he was getting the attention or something. I don't know. And Dario stepped into that car, and the rest is history there. When Dario got in that car, he got in the 10 car, and he was just, it was again a magical time. We just went from one great driver to another, and the car was developed, and Dario got in and just was winning right off the bat, and brought back, saved him from his NASCAR career. And I remember saying to him one day, I said, "Hey, you want to drive our Indy car instead?" And he was up at Detroit, actually watching Marino, his brother, drive in a sports car race, I think, and I said, "Hey, I think I need an IndyCar driver. You want to drive this thing?" I said, "If you want to drive it next year, let me know by tomorrow morning." And we scribbled some things on the back of an envelope, and scribbled on a napkin or something. I said, "Here's the deal." I said, "Let me know by the morning," and he was up all night with Julian, his manager, with Julian Jacoby. They were up all night working on it, and the next day we had a deal. It was great.
Wow.
And
That's cool.
he just went on to win races left, right, and center.
Yeah, he was something else. I didn't realize that it was. I need it by tomorrow morning. That's cool.
Yeah.
But the amount of people that think he's Italian, he's from Bathgate in Scotland.
Right. Well, his father was Indian.
Yeah. But I mean, people think he's like from Rome or somewhere exotic, and no disrespect to Bathgate. My wife's from Scotland. It's fine, but
right.
Bathgate couldn't be further from Rome if you tried. So
Right.
Scotland, no, terrific, and he was just superb and won Indy 500s. Just amazing, absolutely amazing. Just very quickly, when you had Scott Dixon and Dario Franchitti in the same team, I've always wondered, was it difficult trying to keep them both happy? Because they're two guys who
not at all. Those guys are the best of friends, and they made it easier. Yeah, it was easy.
I have seen them a little bit on social media, and they're always having a bit of a poke at each other, which is good. It's good to see. Hang on, great story about Dario. He's a first cousin of Paul Di Resta. Yes, correct.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. Related. Another Scottish guy who doesn't sound Scottish. Paul Di Resta.
Right.
Again, just jumping forward again, I'm aware of the time. 2012 to 2017, you expanded to a 4-car team. I've always wondered how that kind of happens. I mean, is it based on what's available and finances?
Yeah, it's on what's available and what's sponsorship and what have you. It's just we're. I'm trying to think. We had sport. We had I think at the time the Ford Sports Car program was over, and we had all these people to keep employed, so we just ran another IndyCar. Basically.
Right. Of course, it coincided with
Right.
Gotcha.
Right.
Which is cool, and you've got to say something just about the amazing people that work for you. I mean, who have moved across on the IndyCar.
The thing is, Rich, all these things we talk about, you and I get to talk about them and remember them and what have you. But it's down to the people, and I'm fortunate that I have great people that I get to work with, and it starts at with Mike Hall and Julian Robertson and Chris Simmons and Barry Wanzer, and there's a whole litany of people that are on the team, and even people that were on the team that have a lot of those wins due to them and what have you. And it's a nice thing to have a team that can attract good people to work there, and we're, knock on wood, we're fortunate to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots and lots of unsung heroes.
Yes, no question.
Yeah, huge thumbs up to them. Absolutely superb. Speaking of very, very good people, Alex Palou. I
Yes.
mean, I interviewed Alex. Actually, it was very strange. I actually emailed via the team's
Hmm.
website. I said, "Can we
Hmm.
have maybe one of your drivers on for a chat?" And they said, "Yeah, we have Alex Palou on." I thought, "Yeah, fantastic." This was in 2021.
Right.
And all of a sudden, he went on a winning streak and won the championship. So I was like,
Right.
"Fantastic!"
Perfect timing. Yeah, you're a good
Yeah,
you're a good talent spotter. Right.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's all me, clearly. No.
Right.
Um, I think a lot of people were surprised when you signed him, to a degree, because he'd done well and he showed some good things. And when he went to Chip Ganassi Racing, a few people went, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it paid off pretty well. I mean, he
Paid
was
off pretty well. I mean, I remember the first race. We tested a few times, and he was pretty quick in testing. And the first race was in Alabama at and we get to the racetrack, and first practice he was quickest. We said, yeah, okay, great. Second practice, quickest. We said, well, okay, but we got to qualify yet. Qualified on pole. He said, yeah, that's great, but you got to run the race. And sure enough, he got in the race, and we had Will Power and Dixon breathing down his neck the whole race, and that's how they finished. Palau, Power, Dixon. That was the podium, and I thought, man, this guy's for real. He just had those two guys breathing down his neck all day, and he won the race. And he opened a lot of eyes, and yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I mean, when I interviewed him, he'd just flown back actually to Spain, and I said, "I'm so sorry, I didn't realise," and he was a bit jet lagged. But
Yeah.
and when I was talking to him, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, have I got the right guy? Has this guy just won the championship? Because he's so laid back and just
Yeah.
just
He's
takes everything in
back.
his
He's
stride.
not
He's
a
just
fancy person. He just wants to race.
yeah, and it's just absolutely
Yeah.
amazing stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a comment earlier on. I'm just going to scroll up very quickly just so I can find it. Where are we? Bum, 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 bum. Bear with me. Sorry, folks. Yeah, Ken Anderson, evening Ken. He mentioned Alex, and I appreciate you can't say much because of the whole wranglings with Alex when it all came around and lawsuits and everything. From your side, was it pretty clear cut what was going on with Alex from your side?
Always. It's always been clear cut,
I
and
thought it might be.
every court we've been to recognizes that it's clear cut.
Yeah.
And, we just that other. I don't want to mention anybody or teams, but everybody knows who it is and what have you.
Yep.
These guys just, they put out false statements, and they run their race team through the press, and I don't do that. And so I just,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't react to that sort of stuff. I know the facts, and I know what the facts are, and I just try to worry about winning races and championships and let everything else take care of itself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Just so you know, I wasn't trying to lead anything there.
That's all right. That's all right. Yeah.
I just had to mention it, and that team, as you say, they run it through. I mean, that's fine. That's the way they want to do it. But I think when it came down to it, I think everyone kind of fell on your side. I think because they knew who they were dealing with, which is fair enough. And obviously, 2023, what a year! He's just
again, the guy just
the world outside IndyCar has sat up and taken notice of Alex Palou because, and I think it's about 2 or 3 years too late. People should have been shouting about him for a long time because he's unreal. It was the race in Detroit this year. That was the one that got me. It was like to come through all that carnage, and he just was he just kind of shrugged and went.
And kept, and again at the end of the race, restart. And he kept beating those guys back. It was good. It was good.
Yeah, he was just amazing, hugely impressive. Very quickly on the last couple of bits on IndyCar, you got Jimmy Johnson on board. That was cool. I'm interested in how that came about because anyone who has
someone mentioned it to me one day that it'd be great to have a guy like Jimmy Johnson. I said, yeah. And they said, he wants to do IndyCar. I said, yeah, sure he does. And then I said, he's not going to do IndyCar because he's a Chevrolet driver and we're a Honda team. And they said, no, he'll drive. And I sat down and talked to him, and that was the truth. He wanted to come drive, and it worked out great. I mean, I just wish it could have lasted longer.
Yeah.
And but a great guy to have on the team. And believe me, I don't care who you are. You show me any athlete that has won 7 championships, and you bring him into your business. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be the CEO or anything, but I'll tell you what, you bring a 7-time champion into your team, he's going to bring something to you, and that's what he did. He raised the level of our team unquestionably.
Yeah, on and off track, I guess he just took everything up a level. And I've actually described him in my notes as a sort of like a Chip Ganassi in the making. He's got that. He
certainly has the wherewithal. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of brings us on to 2022. I just want to round out the IndyCar chat here with, again, I mentioned to you I was at the Indy 500 in 2022.
Right.
It was kind of a mixed race for you guys because obviously Jimmy unfortunately hit the wall late on, and obviously it worked out because you had Marcus in the team, and firstly, huge bad luck for Scott Dixon. I mean,
the lockout, but the boys were all good, and Ericsson was right there to pick up the pieces, and it was good. Yeah, but, I mean, he did a great job, and he just was sort of sitting back there all day in third and fourth. Not getting any, nobody paying attention to him, and all of a sudden he came out of the pits in second. On that last yellow, he came out of the pits in second or third. No, third. He came out of the pits in third, passed for second, passed for the lead, and just took off.
Yeah,
and the rest is history. It
was awesome. I was screaming my head off. I've been wanting to go to the Indy 500 for years, and it was brilliant.
Marcus is a hardworking guy, and I wish him a lot of success in his new team.
Yeah, it's a shame he's not staying on from my point of view because obviously he's the guy who won the 500. But just quickly, bad luck for Scott and the lockup and everything else like that. But him and Alex were incredible, just like towing each other along. I mean, it was a terrific team effort until, unfortunately, the lockup for Scott. But you must have been thinking, this is going really well. This is going far too well.
That race is, it's 500 miles, and if it's going to happen, it'll happen at the Indy 500. So there's you never have that race won, like I said earlier, until the checkered flag falls, and then some.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's just fantastic. I thought it was great when he said he instantly regretted pouring the milk over his head. I was like,
right.
But I mean, again, final thing, being in victory lane at the Indy 500, you've done it 5 times. I mean, do you wake up in the morning and think, I'd love to do that today? You must think it's got to be there. Back in your mind saying, I'd love to be on that rising podium. And
absolutely.
That's fantastic. Fantastic day.
Yeah, great.
Right, there's so much we could touch on, but I'm not going to. I just want to touch on very quickly sports car racing and IMSA and all that kind of thing. You got into it fairly recently in terms of versus getting into IndyCar. But you had, was it a 9-10 year period where you won the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona 6 times?
Right.
That's an incredible undertaking.
It is. And, I was just, sports cars have always had a soft spot in my heart. If for not for, I drove a little bit in them, and, I obviously come from a road racing background. And I always liked the endurance races, and always liked Daytona, of course, the big ones, and Le Mans, and able to go back there with a competitive package is a great thing. And we had some guys that wanted to do it in those days, that were fire breathers in terms of drivers, and when it came to the race, I mean, bang, they just got the job done. For the entire 24 hours. And that was a time when, those endurance races, there was a time when you used to hang out for about 20 hours and you raced for about 3 or 4. And now those races are qualifying every single lap. I mean, it's just, like this the entire time, and it's, and so you got to have, guys that know how to push the button to drive.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And again, it doesn't really get the coverage over here, unfortunately, but I love the Daytona 24 Hours. And I had one of your former drivers on here, a guy who off track is the nicest, sort of quietest, calm guy. And you think, are you even a racing driver? But on it, he's an absolute animal. That's Scott Pruitt.
Right.
I mean, he's like Jekyll and Hyde, that guy. He's just the loveliest, nice, polite guy. I had him on here. He had all his wine barrels in the background and all that.
Right.
But on circuit, I mean, he owned Daytona for a while.
Right.
He was incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we made quite a run there, and for a lot of years. And we're going back for more.
Oh, lovely. Love to hear that.
Yeah.
You're not done yet. Terrific. One thing, the 2016 class win at that race in France that we all know, 24 Hours Le Mans, that must have been a special one, especially for Sebastian Bourdais, who was obviously
hometown boy there from
he was born around the corner, wasn't he? Literally.
Right. Yeah. Big day. Had a great car there from Ford, and had a good team of drivers, great team of guys, and we were off and going there. I mean, we knew early on we were going to have a shot at that thing, and I wanted to take full advantage of it. And we passed for the Ferrari at 11 o'clock in the morning or something, and it was Ford versus Ferrari all over again.
Yeah, and it was 50 years from the
50 years to the day.
I didn't realize
the day. And, you only have one chance to do it in 50 years to the day. So we took full advantage of that.
Oh, fantastic. And obviously it was like the Ford factory effort, wasn't it? And they got on board.
Yes.
As you say, you must have thought we've got a shot at a class win here. And,
oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then to deliver it as well.
Right.
Fabulous.
Right.
Fabulous. As I said, guys, there's so many things we could talk about, but I don't want to keep the chat too long. But we're going to come to some comments very, very quickly. We've mentioned some of the drivers there. There's a couple I did want to talk about. You had like Tony Kanaan driving for you. One of the most likable guys in the world, let alone in motorsport. It was great to sort of see what he's done, and what was he like to work with? I think it might be a silly question.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, we had him later in his career, and he's a good guy around the team, a good guy to have around, knows his way around the oval races. Obviously, I think he's a bit challenged later in his career in terms of road racing, but a likable guy. Love having him around, and still a friend of our team, I think.
Yeah, terrific. I'm sure he is. I'm sure he'd agree. One more guy who is often overlooked as well. You had like Kevin Magnussen in the team on the IMSA side.
Right.
He's a guy who think you get him in the right F1 car, he's a world champion.
Right.
I genuinely rate him that highly. I guess when he left the team he was with in F1, was he a guy you were interested in getting on board as soon as possible?
Yeah, I mean, just you always, when you have an opening for a driver, you always take the best driver that's available.
Yeah,
and he was the best driver that was available at the time. Yeah, and he got in the car and qualified third at Daytona, and he led the first lap. And he passed for second at the start, passed for the lead a couple turns later, and off he went.
Yeah,
and so it was good.
Yeah. Excellent. He's like a seamless transition from
open. A lot of time for Kevin. Yeah, I like Kevin a lot.
Yeah, great guy. Two guys, before we just go on to some little wind down questions. Apologies, dropped something there. Marcus Armstrong, what a season.
Yeah.
What a season. So Rookie of the Year without doing
Rookie of the Year, didn't even do all the races, and he got Rookie of the Year. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, he's a guy we need long-term contract for. He's good.
Yeah.
Very.
We like him. We think he's got a big future. Yeah.
And you mentioned like Kiffin Simpson, he's coming in. In for next season. It's a big step up, but as you said, he's won the championship today, and he's another good guy, isn't he? Really good.
Yeah, I mean, so we got Alex and Scott, our veterans. We got some young guys coming up underneath them, pushing on them hard. So it should be good. And with Lundqvist, with Linus, he certainly knows what he's doing. So it's good.
There was a comment earlier on saying he's very glad that you got Linus in. Very, very good. John Cavill, he said he's very, very happy that Chip's chosen Linus for 2024. Right, okay. I mean, again, we don't want to keep too long. We're running over a little bit.
That's all right.
Just a few
Go
little
down,
questions.
go down your list there. Go down your list of questions and go
Yeah,
down the
we've got.
list from the fans out there. Let's get to some
Yeah,
of those.
we're gonna hammer them out here. Yeah, we had Tom Gaymore, who does the Sky Sports commentary on the IndyCar here in the
Mhm,
UK.
mhm.
He said that he recently rated Alex Zanardi as his number one IndyCar driver of all time. Oh, that's a tough question. Where would you rate him in your list of top drivers?
Yeah, I would certainly,
Alex.
I will tell you this, my comment about Zanardi is this. He was the first driver on the team that I would categorize. You have some guys that are what I call Friday, Saturday guys, and then you have some guys that are Sunday guys.
Yeah,
And what I mean by that is, you have these guys that are, they playing with the car all the time, working on the car Friday, Saturday, working on the car, but then they fall apart on Sunday, for one reason or another. Or you have guys that don't care about the car on Friday and Saturday, and boy, Sunday they come alive and win the race.
yeah,
And you think, geez, is that the same guy? But Zanardi was the first guy that made that transition Saturday night. He was a great, Friday, Sunday. He was 7 or 8 races into the season, and we're still working on his seat and working on the pedals and fixing the mirrors and all these little things. But like Sunday, it didn't matter if the wheels fell off; he would still bring it to the front. So he was just one of those guys that had a lot of heart, a lot of passion, and could could dissect the car and what it needed. A lot of guys can tell you what the car is doing or not doing, but very few of them can tell you, dissect the word understeer down to 7 or 8 bits of the corner.
yeah.
Or
Wow.
or things like that. Talk about the tire and how the tire is reacting at different points of the race.
Yeah.
I just remember him as he was just magical when it came to the race weekend, and he had a fan following to go with it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, it's great to hear that insight on him. And obviously, we all know what's happened with him on a couple of occasions in his life. Really tough stuff, and just a hard guy, and we wish him well, of course.
Yes, we wish him well
with his recent accident.
Yes.
Something is on the mend. That's from Craig Homer. Thank you, Craig. Okay, what do we got here? Let's just go down, scrolling. Roger Algar. He says, "Evening, Roger." He said, "How did you rate coming over to Rockingham here in the UK a few years ago?" He says he was in the stands waiting for the track to be dried.
Right. Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, I remember. Well, that was right after 9/11. There, we came over to Rockingham.
Yeah.
I remember, and that was a tough week. That was the week after after Zanardi had his accident, and where he lost his legs, and in Germany there, and that was a tough time for the team. And I wanted to be with the team, so I came over to Rockingham, and was one of the first flights out of Pittsburgh after 9/11.
Wow.
And I wanted to be with the team, and I just remember. We wanted it to dry off, and it dried off, and we got the race in. I remember, and I thought it was a good event, and I'm sorry that it didn't. It wasn't I think it was an artistic success, but I guess not a financial success, and so it was doomed as an event. I'm sorry. Whatever happened to the track? Is it still there? Or?
It's been shut down. I believe it might. I think it has gone now. I think it's been demolished. It was a car park for a while. Yeah, real shame. It's just up the road from here, actually. But real shame. No, cool. Okay, guy on YouTube, Homeboy RC. I'm sorry, I don't know your real name, but he said, a question for Chip. If IndyCar was to say, let's go do a race in Europe, where would you like to go and race? Oh, that's a good question.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, a lot of great places in Europe there. I don't know. I don't know. Spa comes to mind. Monza comes to mind. Brands comes to mind.
Brands would be my choice. It's about an hour and a half that way.
Lots of places. Good question. It's unfortunate because when the weather's good in in Europe, it's good here in the U.S. So it's challenging to get there in that time of the year.
Yeah, it's hard
when
to
the weather's good here. Yeah.
hard to swap one from the other. I would always say Brands because I love it. It's the first track I ever went to when I was 6, and
Sure.
very quick question. Dan Mayhew, he said, given Lola is getting back in business and the current IndyCar chassis is now 11 years old, with changes and etc. Does Chip thinks it's time to bring in a new car and chassis? Ooh, that's an interesting one because he misses the days of Lola versus Reynard.
Yeah. I mean, I think, maybe open it up to another chassis manufacturer. I don't know that, obviously Lola, if they're coming back on board now, they'd have some catching up to do. I wouldn't mind seeing a little competition in the chassis area.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have to keep costs under control and keep. It's easy to say the current chassis is 10 years old or whatever, but I think it's important to point out that there's been an evolution of that chassis over the years. The series isn't afraid to change things for safety or performance or both. And so it's been an evolutionary thing with that chassis, which has worked out well for the teams and worked out well for the show and for the racing.
Yeah, sure. Well, maybe there might be something coming up in the next few years that shakes things up a bit. We'll have to see. 2 questions about drivers who have raced for you. One who currently is. Dan Mayhew has said, do you think Dario is one of the most underrated IndyCar drivers, given how much he's won and doesn't get mentioned as one of the greats? And also, Ken Anderson says, is Alex Palou the most talented driver you've ever seen? Oh, that's a tough question.
Yeah, Alex Palou is certainly, of the current crop that are there now, you'd arguably say he's the best.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be much of an argument. Where he fits among the greats of the sport, and I'm a little early to say,
I think time will tell.
Yeah, time will tell. I mean, I think, what was the other question?
One was about Dario, saying, do you think he's one of the most underrated IndyCar drivers, given how much he's won? He doesn't get mentioned as one of the greats.
I don't know. He gets mentioned all the time. I'm around him as one of the greats.
I think it's probably over here in the UK.
He's tell that guy to get over to the US. He's mentioned over here a lot as one of the greats.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good stuff. Thank you, Dan. I have to go to the US now. Shame. Yeah. Great stuff. Very cool. Okay, let's have a very quick look. Diffan Wynne Evans. He said, with being a team owner, how hard is it to choose who will be your drivers for the season, especially if you have a lot of interest from drivers who want to race for your team? Oh, that's
yeah, I mean, it's always like I said, if you have an opening, it's always taking the best driver that's available at the time. You always need to take the best driver that's available at the time.
Yeah, absolutely cool. Oh, Dan Mayhew said he's definitely planning on getting to the USA soon. Good stuff. Good. Okay. Apparently Rockingham is still there, but it's not being used as a motorsport event, sadly. So that's where we are. Thank you very much. It's owned by Cinch, the car guys. There you go. Okay. There's a few questions in here that I was going to ask at the end. Just very quickly, there's a lot of noise around a certain team, one of your competitors, and F1, and the potential for them joining F1. Is that something that you would, maybe not right now, but is it something that you might consider during, in the future, maybe?
I don't know. I mean, I get asked that question a lot. I think, it's obviously it's obviously a club there, if you will, and it's like any other club, it seems to me. And if they want you in the club, you're welcome. If they don't want you, you're not welcome. And I don't know. It's sort of. I think. I hope Michael gets in there, and I wish him well. I really don't know any of the facts. I stay out of it, but I wish him well. I hope he does it, and you never know. But in terms of me doing it myself, I would never say never, but I don't unless something falls out of the sky and hits me over the head. I don't think. Don't hold your breath.
Yeah, fair enough. And just another one I did see from Ken Anderson. He says, Chip's thoughts on the event at Thermal in March. Obviously, there's a £1 million non-championship race.
Yeah.
A bit of publicity, isn't it, for the team?
Yeah. It should be. I don't know. I'm a kind of a wait and see. I think it's a great venue. It's a great place to be. Has all the makings of a good race, a good event. I want to know more. I want to see more. But I'm bullish about it. I'm happy we're doing it. Give it a try. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Another comment from Oliver Taylor. He actually cuts up bits of car. He gets old F1 cars, race cars, makes them into key rings and statues and ornaments, and he's very cool stuff. He said that the Target livery was one of the greatest in all of motor racing, and I give my right arm to own some of that bodywork. I think that's a hint. I think
we can get some from a little less expensive than that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Nice one. Where are we? Let's have a quick look. Yes, F1 Club, brilliantly put. Mark Nichols, correct. Okay, very cool. Did you have a favorite driver when you were growing up watching racing? Did you have a favorite who you looked up to?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was always Mario. It was he did everything, and his type of racing that he did. I would like to think that my career is a little bit looks like that. Like he drove a lot of different cars, and I've owned a lot of different kind of cars. So that we won races in different formulas, and so did he. So it sort of, I think it parallels that a little bit. Yeah.
In my mind, the Andretti Ganassi, for that reason, it sort of parallel in my own mind. I mean, I mentioned to you off air, the only other time I'd been nervous was talking to Mario, and I was nervous talking to you. So I mean, that's a perfect parallel. Right. Absolutely terrific. That's great stuff. I
actually got his autograph when I was about 12 years old.
Wow.
I was in. My mother took us on a weekend trip to Corning, New York. And right up the road from Corning, New York is Watkins Glen. And we went into the town of Watkins Glen for lunch. And Mario and another driver were there tire testing. And I got his autograph. Wow. And, you wonder if that had anything to do with me ever, meeting him and befriending him and racing against him and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing I do wish I had seen was being able to see Mario racing in the flesh. Obviously, he retired before I was old enough to get out to IndyCar. But yeah, so many people say Mario. It's great. Everyone, he's just such a lovely guy as well.
Yes.
Absolute gent. Quick question from Damien Martin. He says, Indy seems to produce more interesting racing than F1 these days. Correct. Is there anything you think F1 could learn from how Indy goes racing? Great question. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I get criticized all the time for saying this, and I don't want to, I don't want to take anything away from Formula One, but I think the on-track product could be improved. That's all. It's just not great it's not great racing per se. It's processional. Max just won again, I think, here in the US, it looks like. And I think that's great. Hey, I'm a big Max fan, And but I mean,
he's a terrific racer. There's no
no question. He's a great racer, and no question about the effort everybody puts in, and what have you. I get criticized. Well, you don't know the effort. Look, I'm not talking about any of that stuff. I'm just saying the on-track racing is terrible. It's just there's no passing, like one or two passes at the start, a couple of passes during pit stop exchanges, and that's it.
Yeah,
it's processional. I'm sorry.
I've been saying it. I've been saying the same thing.
We keep getting told it's the best racing in the world. I just scratch my head.
Yeah.
So, look, I don't want to take anything away from them. I'm glad they're doing what they're doing. That's great, But I just, what could they do? They could, I don't know. They need to improve their on track. Package.
Yeah. There is so much agreement.
Probably easier said than done. But I think there are some things they could do. Yeah,
absolutely. And there is so much agreement in the comments. Absolutely. And I've been saying this for ages. I've got a lot of mates who only follow F1. And I've been saying for 30 years, IndyCar. Watch IndyCar. Right. It's great racing, and people say, "Oh, it's this and that and everything else."
Yeah.
Something needs to happen. I mean, we don't know what it is. There's no.
Right. It's about everything. I always say it's about everything but the racing.
Yeah, It's all about the show and the package and everything else. It's just like, no, I want to see the stuff on the grey bit. That's the bit we all tune in. We all tune in for.
Yeah.
Mark Nichols has just said Indy and NASCAR. The end. That's the end of the discussion. No, it is terrific stuff. IndyCar, and I've been saying it for years, and people are finally getting it.
Yeah. Good.
I just have to shout louder. Okay, a couple of more little fun questions. We've run a little over. This was one I thought right at the last minute, actually. What's tougher, the actual racing or being behind the pit wall, trying to coordinate everything? I mean, two very different entities, I know, but
yeah, I'll just I'll say this. I'll answer that question with a little story.
Yeah,
there was a guy named Tom. His name escapes me right now. Tom Monahan.
okay.
And a guy named Tom Monahan bought Domino's. He started Domino's Pizza here in the U.S.
Right.
Thomas Monahan. He sponsored Lion Dyke for a while, and some other guys.
And Raoul Boiselle ran it in the 80s.
Boiselle, yeah.
I had him on. He's a good guy. I like him.
Yeah. And I saw an interview with Tom Monahan one time, and he had just purchased the Detroit Tigers baseball team.
Right.
And they said to him, did you always want to own the Detroit Tigers? And his answer was, no. He said, I would have been perfectly happy playing second base for them for my entire career.
Right.
So if that answers your question, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I think we know what we're getting at. Absolutely. That's a great story. Yeah. Amazing. This is a good one. Do you have obviously it's always helpful when you win somewhere at a circuit. Sure. But do you have a venue that you like going to as a team owner, just for maybe the atmosphere? Maybe would it be Laguna Seca or Indy or?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite track is the next place we win.
Yeah, sure.
I say this too. I don't, people, let me listen to my whole answer before you make a comment. But
sure.
The last thing I want to do is go to another race, but I love going to a great event. Okay, so if it's a great event, I love it. I remember Mo Nunn telling me that Bernie Ecclestone used to tell him, Morris, we need all those helicopters and we need all the people in the show there and everything, and we need all that, and he wanted to make it bigger and better. And so I think, I like going to an event, and but I also want to go to a good race, but I don't want to just go to another race.
Yeah, sure. It's got to be it's got to be the package. And
the whole package, right?
I must admit, that's why I just loved the Indy 500. It was everything to be, because that's the perfect
big event.
It's incredible. It's just the best. And if people don't get the thing about the Indy 500, just go. If you get the chance, just go and do it, because events like that are something else, and you can get on board with that for sure. This is a question that came up, and I had it noted down as well. I'm going to find out very quickly who it was. But the question was, in history, maybe even in your time as being a team owner, is there a driver that wasn't a Chip Ganassi racing driver that would have made a really good one? Is there one guy that you think that guy had everything that I would have liked?
Wow, that's a good question.
Yeah. I kind of came up with it, and I thought, do I ask this? Is he going to plug a rival or something?
Yeah, no, I'm sure there's somebody out there that I'd like to have. Yeah, no, I don't know. There are lots of great guys out there you would have liked to have over the years. I would like to have Michael for a little bit longer. Michael Andretti when he drove. Sure. I would have liked to have him for a little bit longer. I would have liked to, uh, you know, I don't know. I would have liked to had Rick Mears. I thought he was a great, he was a great guy. I would have liked to had him. I would have
He's
liked
my
to,
favorite IndyCar driver of all time.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm glad you've said that.
I would have liked to have Bobby Unser.
Oh,
I mean, these are guys obviously in a different era. In the current era, I don't know. I pretty much have who we want. I mean, and we have our pick of the people these days. I think, and so it's yeah. I feel like
I think you're pretty happy with what
yeah,
what you've
I'm pretty
had.
happy with who we have now. Yeah.
It's a terrific list of people.
Yeah, I would. Maybe I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, there are lots of guys that I would have thought at one time or another would have been good for our team, and maybe they weren't there. But we seem to have, it's you never know. It's hard to say these days. I don't know the ins and outs of every driver. You don't know if you're commenting more about the driver or the team when you talk about their performance.
Sure.
It's kind of hard to say.
I guess it goes back to what we said before about you got to talk to the person and find out the person behind the driver.
Yeah.
Sure. That's cool. Craig Homer said, "Can you talk Kimi Räikkönen out of retirement?" Cool.
I've had an opportunity to have Kimi, and
Really?
I probably like the guy, but I wonder if he still has the passion. Does he want to do it, or does he just want to do it to say he did it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a difference, and I mean, I just want somebody with some runway, so I can, because there's a lot to learn, and like I said, it was like the same thing with Jimmy Johnson. Like Jimmy was a great guy, and he wasn't far from winning a race.
Yeah.
And so I would like to have him for a little bit longer. So yeah. So yeah, there are guys out there, certainly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, good stuff. We always come to this kind of final question here at the end. You've raced against and with and worked with some amazing drivers. I've just got a little list here. I mean, you mentioned you've got like Bobby Ray Hall and Gordon Johncock, Rutherford, Tom Stevens, Sullivan. I mean, the Bettenhausens, the Unzers, the Andrettis. You mentioned Rick Mears, Fittipaldi, Foyt, Franchitti, Weldon, Sato, Dixon, Canaan. I mean, it's just a ridiculous list of people who you've either competed against or had under your wing.
Right.
It's probably an impossible question, but is there one or two that just stand out as being special for whatever reason, without diminishing the others?
Yeah, it's hard to say, like people with you have to separate that into two categories. People that are on our team or were not on our team.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, so if you look at the guys in our team, look, I mean, it's unquestionably, you got Dixon, that's at the, still at the top of his game.
Yeah.
You got, Montoya, Zanardi, and you got Franchitti. You got these guys are like in their day, on their day. I'm not sure anybody could beat them. I mean, and really, really some special guys there. Guys like Kenny Brack, even Erickson. I mean, when Erickson was on, when he could smell the front, he was fine. I think a lot of guys, guys that were never on our team, sure, you mentioned them all there. I mean, they're, whether it's Mario or Emerson or, when Emerson drove for us with Patrick, I mean, he was unbeatable some days. He was unbeatable. So passionate, so much passion with Emerson. I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out, and I apologize. I'm sure they're going to say, "Why didn't you mention so and so?" And I apologize because I'm sure I'm leaving some people out. But Mario in his day was unbeatable. I remember driving for Foyt, and I remember, his in 1985, we went testing in Indianapolis, and I think the pole time that year was like 2:12. And I watched Foyt go out of the pits in April at a test there, And like on his third lap, I don't mean third fast lap, third lap, he did like a 2:10 on his third lap. I'm going, blimey, what, like, how does, like, as a driver in those days, I'm like warming up at 200 and going 207, 208, 209 or something. His third lap was a 2:10. And, like, you just think, man, these guys have a feel for the car.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. I mean, he's a guy who doesn't get the credit here in the UK.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
AJ Foyt. I mean, wow. I mean,
yeah, in his day. I mean, you got all these guys. You have to put in quotes in their day. So
yeah. But I mean, AJ's the only guy who has and whoever will win in a front and rear engine car in the Indy 500.
Right.
This is very cool.
That's an interesting statistic.
Yeah. So Brits, if you don't know much about AJ Foyt, for goodness sake, have a look.
Right. In his day, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Top draw.
Yeah.
Just in conclusion, I mean, I could sit and talk to you for hours and hours, but we're not going to. You'll be glad to know. But it's in a conclusion here. I've just got here. You got 15 open wheel car titles, four in kart and 11 in IndyCar as that, guys. 5 Grand Am sports car championships, 5 Indy 500 wins. You've won the Daytona. You got the Daytona 500, the Brickyard 400, 6 wins in the 24 Hours of Daytona, 12 Hours of Sebring win, 24 Hours of Le Mans class win, Global Rally Cross Championship wins, and now you're looking to the future in Extreme E. You're running things in there, well over 200 wins in all series. Just an astonishing success rate for what was Patrick Racing and has gone into Chip Ganassi Racing, and you. From so many people, and you've all worked so hard at it. Could you have imagined that it would have gone how it has when you first started?
No, never did. Look, I can tell you, the first year I was in business, all I thought about was, I hope I'm here a second year.
Wow.
I mean, it just Richard, I'm the luckiest guy on the planet when it comes to motor racing. I mean, I didn't come from a family of racers. I didn't come from somebody that knew anything about motor racing. My father was he was in the in aggregate supply business, and I think and if you told anybody you dreamed of 250 plus wins, they'd say you were you're dreaming, or you're not realistic or whatever. And and it's down to the people that I get to work with. That's what it is. I've often said, I don't change the tires. I don't build the engines. I don't do the pit stops. I'm not even driving the car. And I've been lucky to work with some of the greatest people ever to be in the sport. And I can tell you, more than not, a lot of the people I'm speaking about, you wouldn't even know their names.
Sure.
But they're people that I get to see in Indianapolis on a weekly basis, or I get to have lunch with, and buy them a victory lunch, and they're the unsung heroes of the sport, and they're like my family.
That is a lovely, lovely line to wrap things up on. And all those amazing people, as someone just put in the comments, that have worked so hard, and you've worked hard as well. And it's made you a Hall of Famer as well, which someone who, as you said, doesn't have a family in motorsport, and you've made your own way through with some amazing people. That's a pretty amazing thing, isn't it?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. As I said, I could have sat here and spoken to you for days on end, but we'd all get very hungry and thirsty. But firstly, thank you to everyone who's tuned in. Really appreciate it. I hope we've covered everything for you.
Great. Thanks, Richard. I hope your audience enjoyed it.
I'm absolutely sure from the comments and from my phone going crazy, I'm sure they have. And firstly, from a personal point of view, as I said, I was very nervous about speaking with you because you're such a huge presence in motorsport. Thank you so much for coming on and having a chat, and for making me feel a bit.
It's easy to come on your show, and it's easy to work with people that do their homework.
Well,
Well, yeah, I appreciate you doing the homework. Yeah,
thank
easy.
you very much. And
Keep up the
again,
good
thank
work.
you. So, and someone just said this is one of the best chats we've done. So that
Yeah, good,
reminds it nicely.
good.
So from a fan and from all the other fans and from everyone else, yeah, we wish you all the very best in all the various series that you race in, that you run in. Everyone's saying you got to come back on.
Okay, sure.
But we wish you all the very best for the immediate future and long-term future. And thank you so much again for coming on. It's been
Okay,
an absolute honor speaking with you. Thank you.
okay. Thanks.
Great stuff. Good
See
night,
you.
guys. We'll see you soon.